All right, good day everybody. My name is Rikard Schouwstra. Joining me today is Klerk, and we'll be showing you how to build your own web apps in Flowgear. So what is a Flowgear web app? A Flowgear web app is a web application that's developed in JavaScript and React, and it's embedded directly into our Flowgear console to create rich user experiences. So we'll be showing in this session how to create, test, and publish your own Flowgear web apps, as well as the configuration required both on the workflow side and the site side of things. And then, why is this relevant? So web apps would reduce complexity by simplifying the way users interact with complex systems. It enables broader collaboration by providing access to certain systems that users might not always have had access to. What I mean by this is, for example, we'll be showing you guys a Dynamics 365 sales order web app, and not necessarily everybody would have had access in a company to that system. This could be due to licensing or any other example. So this enables users that might not have previously had access to work on the same stuff. It also separation of concerns. What I mean by this is, so we separate the business logic by basically providing the business logic in the workflows. And then the UI can focus on being a pure front end. And that also increases our development or reduces our development time, as you can quickly iterate, as it requires less to promote a workflow as it does to develop some more APIs and have to go through an entire review process and publish that. So it enables us to separate it up a bit. So some requirements we would need for a web app to develop it. So you do need Node.js and includes NPM. This is because we have a Flowgear web app NPM package that we have published, and you'll use that to actually invoke site-specific APIs or even any native APIs via the web app. You also need some sort of text editor. That depends on your preference. For our demo purposes today, we'll be showing you VS Code. You also require some permissions on the Flowgear console. You would require some permissions to actually be able to upload and publish your web app. You'll also need some certain permissions on the workflows that provide that business logic. Carl will show you guys that in a bit. We also require a Bootstrap for styles. What I mean by this is we use Bootstrap internally, and we have some styles, so we actually publish some styles via our SDK. This is so that you can to standardize the look and feel of your web app, so it feels a part of the console. Lastly, we also require TypeScript, which also is a Flowgear NPM package requirement. So today we'll be showing you a use case where we created sales orders. So we'll view a table of sales orders from Dynamics CRM 365. And then we'll also expand on this live build by just showing you a slight extended build that can export those selected orders or can create invoices into Sage Intacct from these orders in Dynamics CRM. We'll also show some basic filtering on that extended one. So as we get to the workflows, Carl will show you what is required specifically from a Flowgear web app point of view, as there are certain configurations required to enable the parsing of the data. Then we'll also show you, I'll be developing the web app live. This that you guys are seeing here is just how we'll actually get the orders from our Flowgear SDK. And this is what the extended demo app does look like, and we'll show you guys that in a bit. So now I'll just hand over to Kyle so that he can work you guys through the workflows and what configuration is required before we will be moving on to the web app build.
Just ignore the thank you page, no one saw that. All right, I promise this is the last time today you guys will hear me. Apologize in advance. The nice thing is, I will be short and sweet because Rick has many, many things to tell you guys. Come grab the first workflow here. So within this web app, we are running 3 workflows. One to get the orders, one to process the orders through to Sage Intacct, and another to just export them into a simple download. I'm assuming everyone has been in our previous sessions, so we all kind of have an idea of what a workflow is, how it works, which is great. For the web app specifically, there's a few little niche thingies that we do need. Specifically, if I come to the end here, we'll see we have an FG response body and an FG response code. So that's essentially what this workflow is putting out via the API. I'm sure we are all aware of the response and whatnot we would get from an API typically, but just to show you how to access those, just drop a variable bar into the screen here. And I'm not sure if everyone is aware of this, but if we click on the little drop down, we have site-specific variables. Let me just put that into a better position. Now these are variables that's very Flowgear specific. You can't actually use these if you aren't referencing Flowgear things. So if we were pushing data into the workflow via the web app or via the API, we'd hit the API input section there. So the FG request body, naturally that's a request body. We've got the headers and the content type. Very similar for the output as well. Just so we know how to interact with the workflow and what data gets pushed in and pushed out naturally. Additionally, once those are set up,
can I quickly just jump in there?
Sure.
So the FG response body and those special props are specifically for API invokes, so it can be used via the web apps, or it can be used via Postman. Then you generate an API key for that.
There we go. Cool. Secondly, what we need to do is set up the API binding, which we have explored previously today, so I won't get into too much detail there. As you can see, this is the GET request. We're hitting the Flowgear sync web app for the orders, and that is great. Let me just close this. All right. Now, the nitty-gritty things, site-specific, that's not necessarily workflow related. What that we do need to set up, we come to the drop-down on the top right here, and we edit the site settings. All right. We need to come to the test environment. If we click on the little pencil there, we get a nice little drop-down. And we need to add the local host under origins, just for debugging and testing and those kind of things. Otherwise, it doesn't quite know where to do them.
Yeah, since when we are going to debug a workflow, we are going to debug it via this URL, so http localhost 3000, and we will embed this URL in a debug URL, so you guys will see. Then we can break into this app and actually debug it live.
And then lastly, if we come down here to our API keys, we did show the API key generation earlier today, but if we click on the little drop down there, we can actually do a cookie-based key, which is what would be required for the specific web app. Does function very similar to the API key itself, so we can give that a name. Specific environments that we are going to be publishing, naturally you'd need one for each environment, and then you can either add a user or a workflow, depending on your use case and the users that you'd want to be able to interact with your web app. So it gives you a nice level of security as well.
Yeah, this will basically allow the user's context to, or allow the workflow to invoke via the user context. So we also have another special prop that Carl showed earlier called FG username. That could also then be used to have some additional checks on the actual user invoking the specific API via the web app.
Yeah, let me just save that and save. Very similar to the API, very sort of easy, mick and druk, Bob's your uncle, API key saved. Happy days. That's everything from my side, and now Rick has his many things to run through. I'm in your guys' boat. I do not understand web apps at all, so we're both learning here. This will be great.
Oh, something just plugged up there. Sorry about that. There we go.
First rule of IT, turn it off and on.
Always. Okay, so yeah, let's just jump straight into it. I'm not going to show you guys straight from the start, as we don't have enough time. It's going to take a couple minutes for this to run. So basically, I'm just going to start off after this. There are different ways where you can start. The easiest and quickest way to actually get your web app started is by using a Create React app. If you don't want to use that, you can also use Webpack configuration. It is a lot more effort, but if you want a more complex app, it could be worth it to do that, but then you'll have to manage the configurations yourself. So basically, this is where we started this project I'm going to show you now. And as you can see, we also have the template as TypeScript. So I'm going to open this app over here. So as you guys can see on our folder structure there on the left-hand side, we have our public folder. So this will be basically copied across into the build folder. What's important here is our index HTML. This is our main entry for the web app. You also do require this ID root to be here, as this is where the component would be embedded within. So if we continue on, you can see here the main entry point on the source side is our index.tsx. So if you don't use TypeScript, well, for our purposes, we have to use TypeScript. But others, if you have used React before, you could have seen a .js or a .ts file. So basically, what's going on here, we are just creating the root from that root element and rendering our app component inside there. So a couple things I'm going to start off with is just opening a new terminal over here. First, I need to add a couple npm packages. So the first one I'll add is our bootstrap. So boot. Oh, wait. Sorry, guys.
I'm sure we've all experienced this. When someone watches you type, your brain switches off just a little bit.
Maybe. Okay, so first we're adding the bootstrap. It's going to take a couple seconds. Okay. Next, we'll also create or add our Flowgear web app npm package. Same way. Okay, great. Now that that's done, the last thing I want to do in the package .json that is very important. This is specifically for when you release your version. It will work in debug, but once you actually publish it, you might find that it doesn't work as expected. So we just need to set our home page as this. This is specific to our React app, or to Flowgear's web app. Once that's done, let's continue on here. Now we know we have that Flowgear SDK installed. So what I'm going to do here is import that. Import. Cool. Great. Just going to import our Flowgear from a Flowgear web app. And I'm going to initialize our SDK right at the start. Great. Now that we have our index TSX, we're just going to move down the tree. We're going to go on to app next. So here, this is what is provided initially when you run the create React app. I'm not going to do any of this at this stage. Just going to start it from scratch. So we use functional components in this demo, but you're welcome to use class-based components for React, but they are on the end of the lifecycle, I believe. So we do prefer this. App. Sorry. Okay. First, we're going to start off just with our main table we want to return. So for this purpose, sorry. We're actually just going to include our main table here, our order table. So to do that, this is going to have to wait a bit because I haven't actually declared the component that I want to use here. So to do this, I'm just going to create a new folder called components with a new file called order table. Okay, great. Let's start that off here as well. Then what I want to do, I'm just going to copy our main return a class. So this is what's going to be returned and displayed as your UI. So I'm just going to add a return here. As you guys can see, I'm going to be still adding this. This would be our state. So we'll still add this. Go. And then just going to add export default order table. Okay. So that is our basic order table. As you guys can see, I just created a plain, we call this JSX. It's very similar to HTML. Slight differences you will see is like the class name would have a capital N. Works very similarly. So I have predefined some classes for basic styling, which I'll also just copy across and briefly explain you through. What we have here is just our table headers. So this is our basic columns we're going to show for this example. And then down here is where we'll actually get our orders mapped through and display our table row. So what I want to start off with, let's first actually go and create our order table row component. Okay, to do that, I'm just going to create a new file here called order table row.tsx. I'm going to create it in the same way. Also remember that export. And then basically what we will do here, we would have a set of properties that defines an order or whatever you want to pass in. So since it's an order table row, we want to pass one specific order so that we can display the columns appropriately. So for that, I'm just going to have one single property defined here. And to keep it simple, I'm just going to call it order. Okay. Then before that, just going to do a return, and this is where I'll actually want to return my new row. So if you guys are familiar with HTML, you guys will be able to recognize that TR, so that is just an instance of a table row. What we do need to do here as well is define a key. So whenever, in React, whenever a component is part of a mapping function, you need to provide a key, as React uses that in the rendering function. So we'll just have a key, and we'll use order number. Just want to see what's going on here. It has implicit any type. We are fine with that, actually. Sorry, let me just quickly see here. So basically what it's complaining about here is a certain TypeScript error where we haven't defined a type for this. So we do have a specific tsconfig file down here, tsconfig.json, that does specify certain checks and certain modules that is provided. So just for time's sake, I'm quickly going to check what we do have here in our pre-built version. Okay. That is another way to do it. If you don't want to define it inline, this is actually a more appropriate way to do this, is to define an interface that you can actually, or a type that you can reference directly. So here, I'm just going to keep it simple still, have orders any. I'm going to remove that as we do not need that at this stage. And then I'm going to do props, which is the React keyword. And I want it of type order table row props. So then what I can do is just define our order as props.order. Okay, as you can see, we have a basic row, but there's absolutely nothing in there. So what you want to do now is actually create some columns, basically. So we'll just create basic columns. Sorry, there we go. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to actually populate the column. To do this, we're just going to add order. First, we're going to start off with the order number. Now we're going to just copy this across for the columns we have defined, as you guys remember, in our order table. So there's about 5 columns. So we have our description. We have our status. So this is very basic. We are just completely just putting it in here, but you can also do some factoring if you want on the strings or on the numbers if we want to round to a certain decimal. But what's nice as well about the web apps is that you can also let the workflow handle this side of things as well. So as Carl and Nick mentioned previously in some of their demos, you do have those quick map functions that you can actually format stuff. So you can leave that all up to the workflow if you want to, because that will also enable a quicker iteration on that. So then we'll do just status, create date.
Plus, then people like me can update the web apps without having to understand this.
And then total amount. Okay, now that is basically our order table row. Now we can go back to our order table and just include the import for this. As you can see, it's happy with that now. Now what we want to do here, this is our state that we define the orders for the row. So I'm just going to define some state for that. To do that, we just start with this, const orders, set orders, and I want to have an initial state of empty array. You can do different things here. This is just a simple example. So let's see here. Just want to include this import from React. Now we have this state set up. We don't have anything going on it yet. On never. So just want to see what is complaining about. For this purpose, we can just create an index, as it is a TypeScript issue we have over here. So for this purpose, I'm just going to use index. If you do use filtering, you don't necessarily want to use an index because it can change depending on if it's filtered or not. But for this purpose, we're just having a very basic table view. So now we have that sorted. Now we want to actually go get those orders and invoke it via the Flowgear web app. So for that, I'm going to create a new folder here called services. So this will actually interact then with the Flowgear web app. So I'm just going to call it order services. TS. So we're just going to define a module here called order services. And then in here, I'm just going to have a function to actually go and retrieve my orders. And this needs to be async, as we are going to call an API for this. Let's see this now. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go and flush this one out. So just for as well time's sake, I'm just going to quickly get this across from our order services. I'm going to explain this for you guys now. So basically what we have going on here, I'll need to configure some stuff. We have a config where we have a base URL located. So basically what this does is based on how you run this app. So if you debug it, it will automatically run the dev URL. So you don't debug according to the production workflows. And then if it is in production and released, it will automatically run the production build. So I'm just going to go and create this config file. To do this, also another folder called utils. And I'll just create that config.cs as well. All we do here is basically create a small module or class. Let's make a class called config. And then all we have in here is our two properties. So it's our base URL. Let me just get this. Is wrong. Sorry, it's not a let there because it's part of a class. So we'll just do the base URL, and this would actually then be your URL or API binding for the workflow or for your specific Flowgear site. So I'm just going to get this in our config quickly. Just going to copy that across now. Okay. So what you guys can see now in here is we have our demo domain, and for our dev URL, we have our test endpoint. So now that that's been configured, we can come back here and just add the reference to that. Now that has been sorted. For this part, I'm not going to do the TypeScript on this. And we need to still also include our Flowgear npm package in here, because this is how now we'll actually invoke our workflow. So I'm going to add the input. And if you guys look here, you can basically see that we have a flowgear.sdk.invoke. So we do have different params you can use here. Firstly, you will define the param, or the method, sorry. So it would either be your get or your post, depending on how you define it in your site, or if it's not on your site, just any API. Your URL. So as we already predefine our URL by comprising it from our base URL along with our endpoint specific for that workflow. And then we also have a payload option, so that is for when you want to actually pass some payload for a post request to create some orders perhaps. And then we also have an optional param for headers. So if you need specific headers, that's now, for example, if you would like to export and download certain files. So once that's been done now, we'll just return our items straight as is. But we do put this around inside a try catch. So basically, our Flowgear SDK would throw an exception with an appropriate message if the API did fail. And then once we do catch it here, we'll actually set an alert that will pop up and show us that appropriate message. So we failed to load the orders because for some reason it was not found or whatever.
Can't test the workflow.
Okay, then basically what you see here at the bottom, we have also certain params here on the set alert. So firstly, we have our alert type. So that defines basically if you want an error alert, it will have specific style on that. If you have a success alert, same story. And then lastly, we have a dismiss option, which means basically how you would dismiss that alert. So if you want to tap the alert, if it has to automatically disappear after a couple seconds, I think that's the main two options we have currently. Or if the view changes, that basically just means if you switch to a different view, it will disappear. And for our purposes, we're just returning an empty array if it fails, because we don't want to have any undefined errors on our table side. So now that the order services has been created, we can go and reference this now in our order table. So this is where we'll actually now call and invoke that workflow. So I'm just going to call use effect like this. Ooh, wait. Actually, I'm just going to get this as well quickly, because I see we are running a bit low on time. Okay. Oh, sorry, this is the extended one.
So one we put in the oven this morning. We prepped.
Okay, just going to copy that across real quick. Okay, basically what you guys see here is a use effect. So in the functional components, this is how you would actually invoke your API when the page loads to get your data. So we'll import our order services that we have defined previously, and then we'll use the set orders to actually set our state. And as you guys can see, we have another property here called refresh. So this is actually a property we will define in our main app TSX so that we have a refresh button that refreshes the order when you click it from the parent component. Okay, for this purpose, I'm also just going to create an interface because it is not happy with my TypeScript tsconfig. So I'm just going to have order table props. I would like a boolean of refresh. Okay, so then we'll just add that. And add that. Okay, great. So this is now order table. It will go and receive the orders and set it. Now, last thing we need to do here, or last two things, is our app TSX, index CSS, and index TSX. So over here, I'm just going to quickly get this across as well. So it's very basic as well. What we do here is we have our refresh data, so this will correlate with the property we have defined. We have our header that will actually have a refresh order button, and this will actually set our refresh data to the opposite of what it has been. And what this will do is it will change the property as we do pass this to our order table. And this means it will refresh and recall the order services. Okay, so now you guys can see we have our table there, and our search bar there. Now that is a complete app. And everything is correctly in index TSX. So the last thing we need to do is update our index CSS. I'm just going to do this. Okay, so in our index CSS, the most important thing here is the top part. So we have an import of our Flowgear web app CSS. So this is to standardize and ensure that your console app looks and feels like the rest of the Flowgear console. The rest of the CSS, I'm not going to bore you guys with now. It's just basic CSS, like getting your table to scroll appropriately, making sure like everything is width-wise correctly. There's white spaces, enough white spaces, and padding everywhere. So that is now our complete built web app. So now we want to actually go and run this. So I'm just going to create a new terminal here and do npm start. One thing I actually forgot to mention, that I'll quickly go back to, we require this app to run via HTTPS, as this is how we'll actually invoke the workflows. The best way to do, well, not the best way, but currently this way is how you can do this by enabling a self-signed certificate. Basically, you can set it to HTTPS equals true, and this is in the .env file, and this is how you would actually then generate a self-signed cert, so it runs via HTTPS. Okay, great. Now, just gonna quickly do this. So this is how it looks on completely on local hosts. So it doesn't include the styles yet. It hasn't been ejected. It won't actually fire any APIs yet. It has to run embedded in the actual Flowgear console, as you guys can see here. Okay, so to do the debugging, which we quickly need to, not that. Quickly just need to get this URL. So this URL basically just indicates that we are going to debug this web app on app next here via a specific tenant on a site. And then here at the end, you can see we have a debug URL. So this is where our web app is currently being debugged. Okay, okay. Okay.
There we go.
Just want to make sure it's doing something. Okay.
Mild panic.
Mild panic. Okay. Not sure why the created date wasn't populated. We might have just missed the correct name there, but that should be easy to fix. But as you guys can see now, we have a published web app here, and it actually goes and retrieves the orders from the workflow that Carl has showed you previously. So if there is another order that comes in, you can just refresh orders, and it will populate through here.
So that's actually pulling from Microsoft 365 sales and displaying it.
And this is now the debug version. And now you can test and basically change something, refresh, and go on. If you are happy now we'll just quickly move on to the publishing of the web app. Okay, so basically to do that, we'll open another terminal. Before we do that, there are certain requirements here as well. So in the public folder, we obviously require that index HTML. We also do require the app JSON as well as the icon.svg. This icon is used when embedded into the platform to be displayed, and the app JSON just gives some extra information on that. So I'm just going to create the app JSON quickly, and also the icon.svg. Copy that across quickly. Okay, so the app JSON. what you guys can see here, we have a unique name and a unique version, so it's similar to the nodes where it has to be unique. If you want to publish a new version, you have to increment it, otherwise it will not allow you. We'll also have a display name, which will be displayed in the side menu where the web app would be located, and also some embed params. Currently, we only support, I believe, menus, or menu, to have it in the sidebar, but we will be looking at extending that in future. And this is just to decide after which of the icons it will actually go and embed once published. So I'm just going to do that, ensure my version is unique, and then just copy across my icon SVG. So this is just any SVG you can get it from certain vendors, or if you have your own SVGs, ours we got from ico.moon. Okay, once that's been done, now we can actually run our build. So we're just going to do an npm run build. Now it's just going to go and create optimized build, bundle all the JavaScript and everything, and create a build folder for us. It does complain a bit about Babel before the create React app. There we go. Now we can come over here in our building where we actually did do the build. So we have our demo app, build, and now we can basically zip up again this entire folder. And we'll just call it app. Now we can come and actually publish our web app. So to do this, you do need to have certain permissions on a certain account to be able to publish your web app. Okay, sorry, lost in here. Okay, so guys can see we're just doing that quickly. And now we have published our web app. So now it's been published, but we haven't actually published it to a certain site. So I'm just going to publish this. As you guys can see, we have our demo orders app. I'm just going to publish this to our demo site. And then if I refresh the page, you'll see on the left there should be another icon appearing. There we go.
Just give it a second. It's been a long day. She's slow.
Now we have our published web app, and it's invoking the workflows that Kyle showed you guys previously. Unfortunately, I don't think we have time to go into the extended version, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys want to stay a bit after.
Just in on that, MC's showing what he's built next, which is this on steroids. It is genuinely impressive. It's amazing. So stick around for that. You'll see the true capabilities of web apps.
Great. Thanks, guys.